Hello and welcome to the Forgeborn Finishing School. I'm Kckid and I'll be analyzing Forgeborn battles to help take your game to the next level. A couple Sundays ago, Grandfather hosted an online tournament that ended up having some furious competition. Today we are going to go through one of my matches in detail and discuss the plays as we go through in an effort to learn. To help with this, I've invited one of my good friends, Jurch from the ChargePlated Podcast.
Kckid, thanks for inviting me. I'm a little thrown off because usually I'm the one that does the talking first, but it's great to be here with one of your matches and kind of dissecting your thought process throughout it.
Right, we've talked about this for quite some time, getting a gameplay match in where I can kind of sit back and answer questions, that's coming out based on my gameplay and have that kind of third-party person ask questions about it, really dissect the gameplay.
I will definitely be the Pat Summerall to your John Madden.
I'm not sure I get a lot of these references that you like to throw around, Jurch, but let's move forward and look at the decks. So we're playing against Weekend in this tournament here. Weekend's a phenomenal player, an even better person, and hosts the weekly 5th Cycle tournaments on Tuesday nights at the 5th Cycle Discord. I will put a link to that in the video description. I highly recommend joining some of those tournaments. You're going to get to play against some phenomenal players, learn a lot, have a chance to silver up some of your decks as well leading into Worlds here. So with that being said, Weekend's deck, he was playing a Nova Circe Fuse, and he had the Circe as his Forgeborn. One of the key components of that was his army commander on Circe, so I knew that was one thing that I really had to look out for when looking at his deck. So Krogius is one big thing in his deck, and that's what I mean by army commander. That's a way he can cheat Krogius to level 3 without having to worry with the detrimental, level 1 and questionably detrimental level 2 Krogius. A couple other things in his deck, Batterhide, that can push back one of my creatures into Defender and take away its abilities for the turn. And then Glowhive Siren is just a really great creature that gives you life when put on the board and then gains additional attack based off that life. And then Swamp Moss Lurker, really good thing, staple to Glowhive Siren. If those two things are in your hand, especially early in the game, you can get a free creature on the board. Looking at his Necrium half for the creatures, the Camouflage Creeper and Combat Spectre, those were two stealth creatures that kind of stood out to me, and I knew that they had the potential to really push some damage through, so I'd have to kind of watch out for those. And then the Necrotic Skeleton, if that got leveled up, that could be a really, really big creature at level 3, essentially. So just keeping an eye on those. And then one really cool card was the Shambling Druid. So this is a Betrayer Forged card. So the Druid puts a Wisp on the board at level 1, and then Shambling, when creatures die, he gains life, takes away some of my life. And so that's just a really cool synergistic combo that I noticed. Moving over to the spell package, Feral Instinct allows him to give a creature a breakthrough and push through some damage, play free cards, a free Wisp at level 1 for that Shambler potentially. And then the Dizzy and Siphon Soul Reap, so really light on spells a little bit, but each one of the spells is pretty decent. So that's his deck in a nutshell. Looking over at my deck, it's also Utera Necrium, and I'm running Nova Circe as well, but I am using the Nova Forgeborn. And so in my Forgeborn, the level 2 is Nova's Might to increase the strength, the health and the attack of my board. And then Nova's Dominion at 3 to put an Oak Father on the board. And then the ability at Cycle 4 allows me to turn any creature, except Krogius, of course, into a Wisp, and then allows breakthrough against that creature. So my deck has some similarities to Weekend's deck. I have, Glowhive Siren, which he has as well, and some other life gain mechanics, and Druid's Chant, Soul Reap, Vyric's Embrace, Stouthide Stegodon, so quite a bit of life gain to some degree. And then Krogius is one of the big pieces of my deck. And without using Circe or Army Commander, I have no real way to cheat Krogius out to level 3. So a piece of my deck is taking opportune moments to play level 1 and level 2 Krogius. And then the other kind of win condition I would say for my deck is Infernal Ritual. This is a card that I think, a good amount of the community have a healthy respect for, but it's one of the ones that you don't really learn early on in the game until you see it in action a couple of times. And its ability at level 3 to put 3 Brutes on the board, give all your zombies 4 attack, and then give them aggressive really can be a game ender. So when I call it a win condition, I'm not saying that lightly. It can be a very, very strong card. There's quite a few other cards in my deck that are situationally reliable, with the Rex being able to give some situational removal when I play other dinosaurs, buffing them and or allowing them to attack creatures can be useful. And then one thing about my deck that kind of sets it apart, I believe, is the dual Leyline Vermin. So there's a Leyline Vermin in Utera and a Leyline Vermin in Necrium, which give me the non-level gated ability to remove a creature's printed abilities for the turn. And we'll see in this match if that comes to help out. Throughout the whole tournament, it did provide very useful capabilities every time I played it. Removing Darkheart Sorcerer's abilities, removing Shambler's abilities, removing Stealth, you name it, it was able to do quite a bit of things. My hope for the deck was to play it against some Rumble Sparks maybe and remove Rumble Spark's ability to transform. And so if you can do that to a Rumble Spark and then kill it, then the Exalt does not go back into play, and the opponent then is no longer able to transform Rumble Spark back onto the board. So there's going through the decks. Jurch, do you have any questions or things you want to talk about there?
Oh, absolutely, Kckid. First of all, since we are talking about a match that happened within an 8-person event, did you have a specific game plan or mindset going into this tournament? First of all, with what deck you were bringing, because it wasn't just a high-quality deck you were bringing. There was intent behind this. And then also, did you have a specific mindset going into this match against Weekend?
Yeah, so my holistic intent, if you will, for the tournament was to showcase the Leyline Vermin. So I specifically chose this purple deck that had the Leyline Vermin and went out and searched my collection for a compatible Uteran deck with a Leyline Vermin. And I say that because I believe Leyline Vermin is a card that hasn't really been given its proper respect in quote-unquote the meta. And so my intent with the Forgeborn Finishing School is always to just raise the competitive level of the community as a whole. And so when I see a card that I think's been undervalued, I'm going to go out and try to prove its worth to the community. And I think this was a great opportunity to do that. I mentioned before, I was really hoping to throw it against some Rumble Sparks to see how it did there and show its capabilities there. But I think this tournament, as mentioned with the Darkheart Sorcerer, Shamblers, things of that nature, that it really got the job done. You mentioned this match with Weekend specifically, so I knew that I had the 2 win conditions I mentioned earlier, but ultimately that my most important one, I believed, was Krogius. So I knew that I would have to level Krogius every opportunity that I got, and so that might mean that I would have to make disadvantageous plays to clean up the opponent's board state so that it never got to a point where it was out of hand, that I couldn't come back from playing a detrimental level 1 Krogius. So there's a lot of times where I would often normally take a shot to my health so that I could trade more health back against the opponent. But I knew that if the trade wasn't really worth it in this environment, that I would probably just try to clean up his board state and keep the opportunity was open to play my Krogius. Was one of the biggest ones for me, I think.
And that overall is one of the things that I learned from your play style and Greg's as well, is seemingly disadvantageous plays that end up paying dividends in the long term. So that's why I think there's so much value in you talking about your way through your matches and your thought processes. And there's going to be plenty of times in this match where you're going to make a play that I think is counterintuitive to how I would go, but that's why I want to get in your head to figure out your play with it. So without further ado, let's jump into the match.
All right, and I don't doubt we'll see a couple mistakes too. We'll see, but we'll talk through those. Of course, I'm a human player, but we'll give my thought process on the match and kind of go from there.
And to begin with, you started out with the Forge. Do you like starting with the Forge or starting off Forge in general?
Yeah, really deck dependent there. I would say that in any deck with a win condition of Krogius, they want to start with the Forge, I would say. So that way they can have the 2 attack phases on, cycle 3. So essentially, when I start with the Forge with Krogius, when cycle 3 comes, I'm going to have the first turn of cycle 3 and the third turn of cycle 3 to have the offensive if I can get Krogius that early. So 2 chances. And then if you're playing more of a control style deck, then I would say at any given point, you're probably more advantageous to start off Forge because that increases your level of reactive play to 2 turns in the first cycle and the third cycle. And I wouldn't mean to diminish the second and the fourth cycle, but I truly believe the first cycle sets the tone for this game, and the third cycle often ends the game.
That's very good insight. I know a lot of players think that they want to be playing reactively, so they like starting off Forge, but circumstantially and depending on the way that you as the player are piloting your deck, the way that your deck wants to be played, that may dictate starting on Forge is in fact better. So let's jump into your first hand. You have the Armored Rex, Zrath's Will, Might of the Herd, Glowhive Siren, and your Stitcher. What Stitcher is that? Is that combat?
It is combat Stitcher, yep.
Okay, so with these 5 cards, what were you thinking when you first saw this hand, and where are you going to lean into your plays?
Yeah, so initially looking at it, I think this is a pretty good starting hand for the deck. The one unfortunate side piece is potentially the Stitcher, but having the Glowhive Siren with the Zrath's Will really makes the Stitcher not terrible here, because it leaves open the possibility of still using it. So when you could play the Glowhive Siren and instantly gain life, that leaves the Zrath's Will kind of in your back pocket as a free creature. And so, if the Glowhive Siren were to be killed, I could then play the Zrath's Will for free, Stitcher the Glowhive Siren back. So that's really a good starting hand combo for me here. The only card that I'm really not thrilled to see is Might of the Herd. It can be useful in this deck, but not on the first hand of the game, essentially. And then if I don't end up the Stitcher route, the Armored Rex is a phenomenal card to get on the board, and hopefully if it survives in the next round, gives me some removal potential later.
So clearly you're going to start with the Glowhive Siren. And then is there anything you were hoping that you didn't see from weekend?
Honestly, at this point, this early in the game, because I had the Stitcher in hand, not necessarily. Anything that he could play in front of the Glowhive and survive would potentially be bad, but that seems like an unlikely play for him, because he's not certain if I can't just gain life with my next play and increase the attack of the Glowhive Siren. So the Glowhive Siren as the first play with a Stitcher and Zrath's Will in hand is actually a very good start that kind of counteracts a lot of what he could do, I believe.
And of course, I'd like to mention at this point, you didn't play Zrath's Will when you had the opportunity. We'll touch back on that after we look at weekend's play, where he played that Shambling Druid. So he got a second body on the field, that Wisp that's just going to be a chump block, and then now he's setting up for a lot of these Shamblings. So then on your play, you end up playing Zrath's Will for free because you gained health, get that mindless zombie minion out. Talk to me about your mindset at that point.
Yeah, I would advise always to save the Zrath's Will until your second action of the turn. The only time I would advise that you play Zrath's Will right off the bat is, if your opponent has something like a Blightskull Bomb or a Necrovive, where it essentially says, hey, you get to choose but sacrifice one of your creatures. Well, in that case, I would be glad to have a 3/3 zombie minion on the board so I don't lose my Glowhive. I think that's probably the only scenario where I would play the Zrath's early and not save it till my second action, because the less things that are on the board, the more opportunities I've taken away from my opponent.
And then you've got it perfectly lined up where your Armored Rex, you'd be able to play in front of that Druid and take it out and survive. So you're sitting pretty right now.
Right. This looks pretty good. And I think what it's going to force him to do, if he's worried about the Rex, is potentially remove his Shambler to try to remove the Rex. And so what we see him do here is Disian Siphon and then remove the Shambler. And so the gameplay slows down a little bit here as we talk through the batching process. But essentially what's happening is, you see I've already taken 4 damage. So he Disian Siphoned me for 3, destroyed his Shambler to play a level 1 card for free. And now, even though I already took the health because we're playing pretty quickly, that actually went into the batch behind the card he's about to play. And so as we're talking through it, he's about to play his Glowhive Siren here on the board in front of the Rex, which will gain him 4 life, it'll gain 4 attack, and then the Shamble happens in the batch to give him another health and 1 more attack on the Glowhive Siren, which is just enough to remove my Rex.
Right, so that math works out perfectly. And the first time I watched this video, I was confused by that batching, but it was done correctly, and that is a very important point to be making. So we go to the second hand. You've got the Stouthide Stegodon, Zithian Dreadmaw, your Leyline Vermin for Mutera, Summoning Council, and Druid's Chant. Looking at these 5 cards, you've got 2 creatures on the board. Where are you leaning?
Right, so look, with a Glowhive on the board, I probably want to play Leyline Vermin. The fact that he didn't gain life on his first play means he maybe doesn't have life gain. But either way, that's not necessarily a risk I would want to take for that to get bigger. So that's initially where my thought process is going to lean. And, I'll be honest, I haven't watched this video for a little bit, so I hope the things I say do come to pass. But, sometimes I have different decisions too. It does look like I chose the Glowhive Siren here. So we're going to shut that off and then back to him for Forge Seal.
So that Forge Seal that he had on his Spectre that came into play, which it looks like it might have changed the way that you were playing, because that Spectre has stealth, so any creature you'd play to try to defend wouldn't be able to do anything that turn. So he used Forge Seal on the Spectre, activated it to use the Cersei level 2 Forgeborn ability, which is destroy level 1 creature, so he just wiped your Leyline Vermin off the board anyways.
Right, and so now that puts me in this interesting position where I kind of actually talked about it before, and that I probably should try to slow the game down for me so that I don't get in a disadvantageous place that I can continue to play Krogius. But I am an aggressive player by nature, and I think, right now I'm doing the math in my head. So right now he's got 10 damage presented on the board. I've got 7. But I have Druid's Chant, which gives me a unique opportunity to increase my damage by 6 at this point. So if I 3/3 the zombie and then gain 3 health, that increases 3 attack to my Glowhive Siren. So that would mean me doing 13 and taking 10. I like those odds, even though I'm down by 8. So that's probably the route I would go, because my only other option is to play the Stouthide Stegodon and trade out with his Glowhive Siren and not gain the extra kicker off of its deployability.
Now, there's also a hidden benefit to leveling up your Druid's Chant, because you know that in Weekend's deck, he also has Krogius. So if you're able to get your Druid's Chant up to level 3, where it's giving a creature +10/+10, then that's something that even if you don't draw into your Krogius, you'll have a chance later on to buff up a creature to potentially slow down and stall out when he's throwing his 30/30 at you.
Right, and the Druid's Chant actually in this deck, it becomes pretty powerful at level 3, so that's something that I like to always kind of keep my eyes on as well. So it was a good, like you said, an opportune time to level it up. But, here with the draw, I do find myself in that disadvantageous position to some degree of now having to play my level 1 Krogius when he still has 10 damage presented on the board.
So sure, at this point, you've got your Raging Creeper, Hibernating Meba, you have your Shardplate Delver, Soul Reap, and like you mentioned, Krogius, and you said this is a disadvantageous position for you. Walk me through what you're actually going to be playing here.
So I think I'm going to go ahead and just lead out with the Krogius because, like I said, this is one card that I have to play, I think, to maintain 2 win conditions, because you never want to limit yourself down to 1 win condition, and this deck is just built in a way that those are, it's one of my predominant win conditions. So you notice I really wanted to play the Creeper because that puts him in a position to either give up a 5/5 or take 5 damage. Mm-hmm. I believe he would have just taken 5 damage. I don't know that. But then for me, that's a pretty good deal. However, the Krogius here, if it's not able to be removed, essentially I have that Shardplate Delver in hand, which is going to pump up, and no matter how big the Glowhive Siren's attack gets, even if it dies, it's going to be big enough to kill the Glowhive Siren probably and deal some damage to the opponent.
So you were more concerned about how high the Glowhive Siren's attack could get versus the stealth Spectre in the lane right next to it?
Right. So I think that's just a storm I have to weather for the moment and allow that 5 damage to probably go through. In my opinion, if I were to let the Krogius just block the Glowhive Siren this round and take, 5, and block the stealth guy, then I'm giving my opponent another chance to get that Glowhive Siren really big and be able to push through a bunch of damage.
And that makes total sense. So Weekend is trying to block the mindless zombie minion with his bear, and then you played the Shardplate Delver like you said you were going to, and now for the last play of Cycle 1, Weekend comes in with his Batterhide.
Yep, and so he's getting the choice here on what he wants to push back. So he pushed back the zombie minion here. Essentially, if you were to push back the Delver, he's just losing his Glowhive Siren and stopping 4 damage. That doesn't feel like an advantageous trade. And if he pushes back the Glowhive Siren on my side, what he's doing is giving me the potential with a Glowhive Siren in the front to remove his creature next turn on my last turn of the Forge play and deal a bunch of damage with a potentially pumped up Glowhive Siren. So I think that's what went through his head on the mindless zombie minion. It's 100% the right call.
Yeah, was trying to keep a bigger board state by keeping that bear alive. And then y'all do your trades there, go on to the start of the second deck cycle. And what is your Forgeborn ability on your Nova?
Yep, so Nova's Might, I get to give all of my creatures +2/+2.
And looking at this starting hand where you are off Forge, you've got Summoning Council level 1, Krogius level 2, Hibernating Ritual, which you mentioned early on, and then you've got the Raging Creeper again, and Grove Mother, one of your favorite cards.
Yeah, so Grove Mother, you're going to rarely see me play, so it has a place in certain decks, I do believe that, but you mentioned it, I don't prefer the card because it forecasts your play 100% of the time. You know, if someone plays a Grove Mother, I'm going to try to remove it as quickly as possible. So Nate did activate his Forgeborn to destroy a level 1 creature to remove my Delver off the board. So then we're going to go into, I believe, his play yet. Looking at my hand, again, right off the bat, I've got Krogius, so we've talked about the importance of playing that. And then Infernal Ritual is a very important card as well, so I think that's where I'm going to lean into, probably.
And it looks like he played his level 2 Glowhive Siren, so it's kind of a Spider-Man meme going back and forth of you guys each playing your Glowhives as much as possible, but this one's at a 5/10 now, so he has a lot of potential damage coming your way.
Right, and you know, a thing about the Glowhive Sirens is they're just such a big value package in one card, so it is always good to play them. But one thing that I would tell people is Glowhive Sirens is also one of the cards that doesn't fall off in value very fast. So it's not like an ideal underdrop card that you would play a level 1 and level 3, but it also has the potential to be a good value card in level 3 if you underdrop it. So don't ever feel that you have to play it. Oftentimes it is the best play, but if you have a better play, feel confident and play that, and your Glowhive Siren will still help you out later.
So you decide to match up your level 2 Krogius against that Glowhive, maybe get it to stick around a couple of turns and absorb a bunch of damage while you set up the rest of your board. And I know that you'll want to try to play that Infernal Ritual, board state depending. Oh, he drops his other Spectre out, so now he's got 2 creatures with stealth and 13 damage that, unless you've got aggressive creatures coming out, you're going to have to take that to your face.
Right, so I'm almost essentially locked into Infernal Ritual, which is an okay decision. I still have some other good cards in here, but Infernal Ritual, getting leveled up, is really going to help me out later in the game, almost every time. So I've got a free deletable creature in Krogius level 2 at this point, so I can create 2 zombie minions. And this is a little bit early for my liking, but I have to flip Nova's Might to get rid of one of the stealth creatures, otherwise it's just going to become unmanageable.
And then using your ability there, you're still going to chase down that bear, so it won't be an even trade for that 3rd zombie minion.
Right, which leaves me just a little bit of board presence to kind of keep pushing, which is okay. You know, having something on the board to give your opponent something to think about is always beneficial to you, so that way your other 2 plays can potentially result in some net positive.
And did you feel a little bit more comfortable using your Forgeborn ability, knowing that your opponent already had in that turn?
That's a good question. I guess unless the 2 Forgeborns are in opposition, I would say I don't normally think in that mindset. And what I mean by in opposition is, let's say my, level 3 Forgeborn says play an Oakfather minion, which it does, and he had Death Touch on level 3 that destroys a level 1 or a level 2 creature, then absolutely, that's in the back of my mind the entire time. But right now, mine just buffs creatures and his kills a creature. So really, mine's more in the mindset of as soon as he used it to kill my creature, I was okay with that because now for the rest of the cycle, I don't have to worry about that free delete because at times I would opt to play a level 2 creature that is a disadvantageous play to a potentially level 1 creature because he could just remove it. Like Leyline Vermin's a great example. There might be a play where Shardplate Delver is a worse play than my level 1 Leyline Vermin, but I'm forced to do it because I know he could just remove the Vermin.
Speaking of Leyline Vermin, with this hand, you drew both of them. So you've got the level 2 Utera Leyline Vermin, Might of the Herd. You have your level 2 Shardplate Delver. your level 1 Betrayer Leyline Vermin, and Zithian Dreadmaw again. With these 5 cards, I gotta assume at least one Vermin's hitting the table for you.
Yeah, without a doubt, and especially because, he's showing Glowhive Siren, which has the ability to get bigger, and then the Stealth Creature. So I have the potential to shut both of those off, and not knowing what else he's going to play. That being said, I end up with a kind of interesting decision here, because ChargePlated Delver at level 3 becomes a pretty big threat. But looking at his board state, I think I've probably already ruled that out of my play, unless he put something I really needed to kill in the minion zombie lane, right? Like if there was a level 2 Dark Heart Sorcerer, which he doesn't have, I'm just using as an example, that I really needed to pump something up enough to break through and kill that creature, that I would probably consider that, of course. But in this game, I am probably going to play the 2 Leyline Vermins. And now my thought process comes down to, I'm not going to kill the Glowhive Siren with either of my Leyline Vermins. So what I'm going to do is put the one in that's going to lower it either way, right? But it's not going to kill it. So save my bigger threat to put against a potential new threat. So I have a level 1 Leyline Vermin that I'm going to play here and turn off the Glowhive Siren. And so I think this is a misplay that I mentioned before, right? In my mind, I should have put the level 1 Leyline Vermin in front of the Glowhive Siren, because it's not gonna, well, it might survive or it might not, but it's not gonna kill the Glowhive Siren. So I'm okay if it dies and just breaks down its health a little bit. And then I could have saved my level 2 Leyline Vermin to put in front of the Stealth Creature, block it, kill it, and survive.
Yeah, because you are a little behind in board state right now. I mean, it is 2 creatures to 2, but Weekend has 1 play in hand against you, so trying to recoup your board state as best you can, you are managing not only how do I take out his creatures, but how do I keep mine on the field.
Right, and one thought process just a little bit is, would this incentivize the opponent to remove it? Because in my opinion, if you have 2 creatures in the front lane, especially a stealth that you want to keep alive, you want to remove a threat, right? A smart player is going to wait till their second action off Forge to remove the threat. So by putting it in front of the stealth creature, I was potentially incentivizing him to remove it early, which he did not take because he's a smart player.
And that poor mindless zombie's going up against another bear now, a stronger bear.
Well, fortunately, that's an okay trade for me. So what I assume Weekend's doing here is just leveling the bear up, right? Because at level 3, the bear becomes huge, and then it's a threat all in its own right.
And then here Weekend comes back with a Pax Blessing to pump up that Geist. Nope, that Spectre. My mistake. Wrong spirit. In order to survive against that Leyline Vermin. So it wouldn't have survived against the level 2, but because he had it placed the other way, then it survived against the level 1. That was kind of tough.
Yep, mistakes were made. Mistakes were made.
Now, for the last hand of the second deck cycle, you've got Virix Embrace, Indomitable Fiend, your Zrath's Will level 2, your Hibernating Meba, and your Stouthide Stegodon. Looking at these cards as we're getting towards the end of cycle 2, what were you leaning into playing, especially now seeing that Weekend led off with his level 2 Shambling Druid?
Well, so with Zrath's Will in play, or in my hand, I essentially have what I would say is 2 options. Stouthide Stegodon, but it needs to be unopposed to gain life, or Virix Embrace. So my first card is going to probably be Virix Embrace to remove the 11-2 camouflaged Spectre. And then I'm going to gain 4 health, and then save my Zrath's Will again for the second play. And then I become reactive at that point. I have Indomitable Fiend, Hibernating Meba, Stouthide Stegodon. They're all 3 things that I wouldn't mind leveling up. I would say of the 3, my preferred scenario would be to put the Indomitable Fiend somewhere where it survives, so that it is a potential on-forge piece of ammunition for my level 2 Infernal Ritual. I don't think that's going to come to pass, but let's play this through a little bit and see what Weekend comes back with.
So it looks like you're thinking through your plays and the exact mindset that you just went through with us. It seems like you're kind of going through that exactly as you foresaw that you would do, and that seems like it's a pretty straightforward and strong play. You net 2 health on that, but then so does Weekend.
Yep, and this tournament was just a 40-minute round tournament, so there are a lot of things that you'll see us as players are doing to kind of shortcut. So when I gained 4 health off the Vyrix, I simply gained 2 because of the shambles. So in some of these tournaments, when they really condense the play clock, you're going to find yourself having to do those sorts of things. So we'll try to talk through those as they come up just to make sure that everything's clear.
Now, just in case we've got any... Oh, it looks like Weekend is going to be making their play. Nope. So if you could comment real quick, were there any cards, because we're at the end of the second deck cycle, any that you feel like you missed leveling up that you were worried might put you behind the 8 ball as we head down the second half of this match?
Yeah, so I did get Krogius through level 2, but I did not play Infernal Ritual level 2. So that is one that I would really like to play. I was happy to level up Vyrix Embrace, level 1 right there, because also getting that to level 2, it only seems like a small difference from 4 to 6, but you actually, in the game, there's quite a few creatures that have 6 and 5 health, especially at different breakpoints. Like you see this level 2 Shambler's only 5 health, so a level 1 Vyrix wouldn't have killed that. So that 4 to 6 is actually a pretty decent jump in the game, and that's one thing that I look forward to, is typically leveling that card up at least once.
And then it looks like Weekend did the Batter Hide there to push back your ley line because that was the only creature you had in play, and then also turn off its text, which was moot at this point anyways. But now there is 8 damage from the Batter Hide showing, there's the 3 breakthrough, and then the Druid as well. So you need to make a comeback here.
Yeah, so, well, I knew I had the Zerath will kind of loaded up, right? And that has to, well, something has to remove the Shambler. You know, Shambler stays on the board, it gets exponential returns turn after turn after turn. So it has to get removed. And then in this scenario, I have nothing that's going to kill any of his other creatures. So that feels bad that I'm going to leave Weekend with a bunch of board state. But ultimately, it's not the worst thing because of the shambles. So the less creatures I kill. But now I'm looking at my cards and I'm deciding which one of the 3 I want to level up. So this is my thought process here, because I'm really just going to either chump block the Batter Hide so I don't take 8 damage, or I'm going to lay the Stouthide Stegodon or Indomitable Fiend in an open lane. So my thought process is at 8 points of damage when I'm at 42 going into cycle 3 with my deck is probably too much that I don't want to take. So this goes back to having to slow the game down a little bit to give me a chance to get one of my win conditions online, which in this game, currently without Infernal Ritual level 3, is probably Krogius. So I'm going to probably play the Moeba here, because one of the things about the Moeba is that at level 2, it gets a significant stat buff, no matter what its Forge word is. So getting through the level 1 Moeba is the hard part, and then after that, it's very good on curve for stats. The interesting thing about the hibernating Moeba is that it really doesn't hurt it too much, except for at level 1 where it's a 2/6. And it kind of equalizes itself at level 2 for a very strong card, and then is astronomically huge at level 3. So for me, that's the biggest bang for my buck for a card that's just going to die. And he's got 5 shields, so if I'm chump blocking the Batter Hide, neither of my other creatures are actually going to hit health either.
And that makes total sense that you are trying to make an investment in the end of this match and hopefully have a stronger creature, again, possibly for taking out his Shambling Druid level 3, or by making sure that you have something that you can buff up against his Krogius. So going into the start of the third deck cycle, you are at 37 health and Weekend is at 51 health. How are you feeling about the match at this point?
So at this point, I feel really good. Even though
you're down by 14?
Yep. So I'm down by 14, but I have seen and leveled my Krogius at every level. So essentially, I have a 75% chance to draw Krogius in cycle 3 and really start putting the damage through, because there's not a lot that can stop Krogius level 3. Though Weekend does have the level 3 Bear at this point, which is a very high stat line. Not quite Krogius, but would allow him to potentially trade out Krogius over 2 turns and really mitigate damage. But he would have to draw that in addition to, drawing it after my Krogius, essentially, to be able to put it in the right lane. But then at cycle 4, Weekend's Krogius comes online. He hasn't played it at all this game, so what he's essentially hoping to do is discard it in the first hand of cycle 4 and then play it for free out of his graveyard. So that's my worry, is turn 2, cycle 4. This game could potentially go south for me very quickly. And he could expedite that just a little bit by doing his first action phase of, turn 1, cycle 4, by playing the level 1 Krogies to bring it back if he feels he needs to put the gas that quickly. So
looking at the first hand of the third deck cycle, you have your level 2 Glowhive, level 1 Indomitable Fiend, level 1 Stitcher, level 2 Armored Rex, and then your level 1 Summoning Council. What are you looking to do? I'm assuming it's the Glowhive Siren first, but where is that going to lead to your second play?
Yep, so Glowhive Siren's going to come out, and essentially it just is going to give me a little bit of health to maintain, slowing the game down. But it can survive against either of his threats that are out there right now, which is key, and trade it out. So as you can see, at this point, I'm actually not looking to push damage. Otherwise, I would maybe free lane something and try to remove something. Essentially, I'm trying to just hold off and wait for my win con.
And you do have that level 3 Forgeborn ability, which is playing an Oakfather minion, so you have that in your back pocket as well.
Yes, and this is one that I really love. So also when I start on the Forge with Dominion at level 3, Nova's Dominion, I am very likely to just pop that early. So because I have 2 offensive phases in cycle 3, I wouldn't be surprised if you see me pop this right here in my second turn and open lane an Oakfather.
And I know, based on playing you as much as I have, that would be a threat that you'd try to push the pedal to the metal on this and get an Oakfather out when you have the Forge, so you're going to push a lot of damage potentially in this situation. But it looks like Weekend put his level 3 Spectre in a defensive position against your Zombie Brute, and looking to make that trade, take your Brute off the field, and then have something with stealth that you're going to really have a difficult time counteracting. 10 damage coming back at your face. So you went with your Armored Rex to go against his Batterhide, Dinosaur on Dinosaur action there, and then you do use your Forgeborn ability to get that Oakfather out. So you're really trying to force Nate into some bad decisions.
Right, and the Armored Rex just lines up so well at 5 armor, or 4 armor, 5 health, so it's 9. So it's going to live by 1, and then potentially present a lot of problems next turn if I draw that level 2 Shardplate Delver or something to that effect, and I can use that. So that is something that, Weekend's probably taken into consideration, because his big stealth creatures on the board, that's one thing that can push damage through to me. And I'm quite certain he's aware that his health's going to go down to 7 hit points here, and then with a Rex on the board, I could easily drop a Dinosaur and remove it. So we'll see how that plays out as well. So I like to always put armor out on the board, especially if the opponent's about to play their last play. I try to do that as much as I can, because I know when I look over at cards, I always forget about stealth. I don't see it, or I forget about armor. So one thing I would just say, courteous thing to your opponent, put that armor token out every round if you can try to do that.
Yes, and it also does increase the board presence of what's going on, so it's having more free information that is going on there. So I think Weekend is in a pretty tough spot, deliberating over his plays, and he busts out Forge Seal level 2, and he's playing it on his he played it on the Spectre, and Soul Siphon, so that is going to destroy the Batterhide to give a creature +8/+8, which then he's using on that Oakfather, so that's going to be doing a lot of breakthrough damage, and it's going to take out your Glowhive Siren now. So oof, that's a tough turn where both you are going to be losing a fair amount of health in this trade.
Yep, I think he's also looking that my Krogies can come online at any moment here, so he's really just trying to push the damage through.
And then you pick up the Carnage, and we're going to the second turn of cycle 3, and you've got your Creeper, your Infernal Rituals, Raswill at level 3, Shardplate Delver, and your Soul Reap, which you might be able to leverage into that free Zraswill play. What is your thinking with this hand here?
Yeah, this is a very tough hand. So I did draw that Shardplate Delver, as we kind of mentioned. So that potential exists that I could throw it out, not replace anything, and kill his Oakfather with a battle from the Armored Rex, or it would get +2/+2 from the Rex. I could kill his stealth guy. So that option definitely exists. But I have another really good tool, and that is to potentially Zarath's Will and then Infernal Ritual.
Now it looks like what Weekend did was play the Transcendent Biologist to get 2 chump creatures out on the field, and then sacked it right away to use the Forgeborn ability, Soul Siphon, to pump up that Oak Father even more. Like, this is getting ridiculous here.
Yeah, just trying to keep that Oak Father on the board, essentially, and keep things moving along.
So then you go Soul Reap to take out his Wisp, but I don't think it should have, because it doesn't look like that he buffed up the Transcendent Biologist, or used the Transcendent Biologist to buff up the minions +2/+2.
Yeah, I do think that's something that we definitely missed in playing this, and maybe that's because of the time frame. We're just pushing to go fast. That's not an excuse, but either way, he missed buffing his minions by +2/+2 from the Biologist, and I missed it too. I mean, had I seen it, I would have 100% said something. But ultimately, that doesn't change my decision. I still would have Soul Reaped one of his creatures, and maybe it would have been the Stealth Guy to bring it down to 4, but honestly, it might still have been the Wisp, because that's 3 more damage to his health instead. So it may have changed the target, but it wouldn't have killed anything. But I still would have played the Soul Reap so that I would have the Zerath's Will to play for free at a later date.
Yes, which is definitely important, considering you've got Infernal Ritual, which would be playing some brutes and then giving them attack and aggressive, or you could be using it to have the Shardplate Delver replace, and then if you still have your Rex online, then it would be able to attack one of his creatures and possibly wipe it off the board.
Right, and those are all good scenarios, but ultimately with that 10/7 stealth, I think I need to give something aggressive, so that's probably where I'm going to jump to. Right now in my head, I'm just doing the math on what do I sacrifice. And it probably would have been a Zerath's Will minion, and I would have left the Rex on the board. However, Weekend plays the Batterhide, pushes the Rex back, and turns its ability off. So at this point, I will probably sacrifice the Rex and then start playing the zombies.
Yep, because that Rex now is just kind of floating, not necessarily useless, but it doesn't have that Rex ability on it, so then the Shardplate Delver seems a little less impactful, and then it seems to reason that you'd lean heavy into the double spell play for all those zombie brutes.
So just kind of quick talking through all the damage that Weekend's presenting, right? It's a pretty lethal amount. So we're going to go through and play our free Zerath's Will. Without this, I probably would have lost the game here, to be honest. So that's very fortunate that I had that card.
Yeah, it looks like that you're trying to cover as many lanes as possible, mitigate some damage, and then I think it's kind of semantics, the brute that you're changing lanes on here, because unless you're planning on replacing it, then it doesn't matter which one of those 2 lanes it goes in, because you're going to Infernal Ritual and put one in the Batterhide lane anyways, or the Oakfather lane. So looks like a little deliberation, because it doesn't seem like you're set on which way you were going to go, but
right. I think you're 100% right, is that in my mind I thought, well, I still could play the Delver and then take 32. But then when you put that in your head, then you go, oh, well, okay, that's not a viable option. So then at that point it became moot where I put it, of course. And here I just fill the lanes with brutes.
Yeah, 39 minus 32 is not a very good number. But you play it, you give everything aggressive, so at the very least you're going to be mitigating a lot of the damage. You're going to prevent that Spectre from stealthing his way into 10 more damage against you. You chase down and make that trade, and your board state is going to look a lot better than it would have had you gone the other route.
Yep, here, and then that big breakthrough is coming through to really drop me down.
But you prevented the Batterhide from doing a lot of damage, so then you were okay. Just got to clean up your board a little bit. So the last hand in cycle 3, you've got your Dreadmaw level 1, Stegodon level 1, your best friend Grove Mother level 1, your Utera Leyline Vermin level 3, which is where it gets super powerful because that deploy ability has turned into an activate ability. So then whenever you are activating this card, it blanks an opponent's text. And then you also have the versatility of your level 2 Necrium Leyline Vermin. So you have both of those at your disposal to really start to cancel out any shenanigans Weekend might throw your way.
Yeah, and so you know what I've found with the level 3 Leyline Vermin is that it is enemy number 1 from the moment you drop it. So I have found very few turns where I get to activate it twice. I'm not saying it doesn't happen because it's a pretty beefy creature, but yeah, as soon as you play it, it's often the first target the opponent has. And so what I do is my first play is put the Leyline Vermin level 2 in front of the Oakfather and turn off its breakthrough.
Because just in case Weekend had something where they could remove this Leyline Vermin, then you have another one to be able to chump block or whatever to make sure you're not taking that 24. 22 is equally bad, but you wanted to make sure you have one of these clear. And you did put the Leyline Vermin in the back of the row, but yeah. I trust that you'll fix it.
Or I won't. It'll just die. But yeah, so I was kind of my mind tells me, it's just there to die. And so is my level 3, unfortunately. But at this point, if Nate had the ability to remove either of my vermins, that's game. So I'm really at his mercy right here, or in the RNG mercy that he didn't draw something to remove either of these 2 threats.
And then, so when you played that level 3 Leyline Vermin and you activate it, you turned off the necrotic from his skeleton, so it won't get a minion coming back in. So that was a very astute play there.
Right, and the necrotic, any necrotic creature, I do like to say is an okay underdrop in these scenarios, because if you never play the card, but then at the end of a game you need to block something twice, or you need to throw down something that your opponent can't remove, like in this scenario, if Weekend could kill either of my Leyline Vermins, that's game. Well, if it was a necrotic creature there, he would have to be able to remove it twice, so spend 2 action phases essentially to try to remove it and end the game. So necrotic creatures always have a good place. I'm always happy to see them in any deck.
And now with only one last play of the 3rd deck cycle, it looks like you're going to have at least 2 creatures. Well, you're going to have 2 creatures staying on the field and possibly facing off against an empty board by Weekend, unless he decides to open lane something, which could be dangerous seeing how low both of your health totals are at.
Yeah, looking at this board state right now, you're right, he could open lane something. My other thought process was if he drew the bear, he would put it up against the Oakfather, and then that would turn things around on me a little bit for sure. But I do feel like I'm in a pretty good scenario if he cannot remove the vermin. So he's going through the thought process, and his thought process is here, and he chooses to play the level 1 Swamp Moss Lurker.
And then he pretty much ends that cycle with a clean board. You've got an 8-3 Zombie Brute and an 8-4 Oakfather heading into the 4th deck cycle. And let's see what that first hand is. You are off Forge, but you have your level 3 Infernal Ritual, which could pay huge dividends. Your level 1 Stitcher, your Grove Mother, Summoning Council, and Zithian Dreadmaw. So you have 4 level 1 cards, and then your Infernal Ritual. This objectively doesn't look like it's a great hand, especially off Forge. What are you thinking there?
Yeah, so off Forge, I love the Infernal Ritual level 3, especially because my opponent has an empty board. Everything to me screams this could be the end of the game. I could win in this round. Okay, so if my opponent plays a creature against my Oakfather and a creature against my Brute, that's very much a scenario where I win this game by sacrificing on the last turn one of my characters or one of my creatures, and then open laning 3, 10, 6 zombie Brutes. Right?
Yeah, that math checks out, that then you would have 30 unblocked damage, because right now Weekend would be looking at blocking the 2 creatures you do have out on the board. So maybe having just opportunity for 4 piddly creatures that then just need to live long enough so you can sacrifice them with Infernal Ritual. That math actually checks out.
Yep, but I will say the rest of this hand I was not extremely thrilled about. But, in my mind, what I was probably going to do, pending what Weekend plays, of course, is throw down the Summoning Council to put 2 bodies on the board to ensure if somehow he was able to remove multiple creatures, that I would probably still have 1 to sacrifice for Infernal Ritual.
And are you still, you talked about Infernal Ritual, that might give you the finishing kick to win this. Are you thinking what else are your outs in this match at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. So you saw me look through my banish pile there. Essentially what I'm doing is checking, hey, are there any level 1s that could help me in any given scenario, because I have the Stitcher in hand. So that's one thing you kind of always have to check for. Just be aware when you do that in TTS, that's a huge tell. My opponent essentially knows that I have Stitcher in hand now at this point. So I would recommend, if you're playing a Stitcher deck and you're really that worried about it, always just check your banish pile every once in a while, because it just kind of becomes obvious. I only check it when I have my Stitcher, so if you play against me, huge tell.
And were the only thing you were looking for, I believe the only level 1 card that would have any value to you would be possibly a Leyline Vermin to turn something off?
There's a couple other situational cards in there, so it's just gaining an awareness of what's in there. if you have a creature that can gain you life, that could be pivotal. If you have a creature, that could turn an ability off, that's extremely pivotal. It really just depends what you got in there. So just take a look to kind of know what your options are. I will say that Weekend's playing right now, and he's taking a lot of time to deliberate. So in my head, my biggest worry was if he drew Krogius here. I mentioned that before. He's taking a very long to deliberate. So in my mind, I had already checked off, okay, he doesn't have Krogius. But then here it comes. So now you're going to see, at this point in the game, I went through the entire range of human emotions, like, oh, what do I do? Okay, I just went from being very confident in potentially winning to now not so confident. Everything's telling me now at this point with Krogius level 3 coming out, I have to play Infernal Ritual first. I know that, but everything in my body is saying that feels wrong. You're off Forge, you drew the level 3 Infernal Ritual. You need to save it. So for a second here, I throw down Zithian Dreadmaw, and then, I instantly grab it back. Weekend, a very gracious player. I think we were talking at this point in the game, and he's like, that's what you're going to play? And I was like, oh man, I don't know. No, that's not what I'm going to play. And so I pulled it back because this is a very hard thing to do, is play your level 3 Infernal Ritual off Forge on your first action phase. But when level 3 Krogius is coming out, the game has changed. It has just taken 180 degrees, and things are now against you 100%. The math in my head said there's no way that I win this game, right? But you have to take every out, no matter how small that chance is. And the only chance that exists is me filling the lanes and preventing damage. Because at this point, Krogius has 30 with Breakthrough. So I need to prevent 9 damage.
And as a reminder, Weekend's Cersei's Forgeborn ability at Cycle 4 is Army Commander, so he gets to upgrade a card in his discard pile twice and play it for free. That we talked about that at the beginning of the match, but now here is where it's online and can come to fruition. With Krogius level 2 in his banished pile, he can activate and get 3 out there when he has the Forge, so it's going to be in the front row, and you'd be staring down 30 damage. So like you said, you're going to deliberate a little bit more, but eventually you will end up making the correct play in getting Infernal Ritual out there and putting those 3 brutes into the lanes that they need to go to try to really mitigate. But we're going to dance around a little bit, and you're going to do the Stitcher for a hot minute.
Yep. So here I look back and go, oh, what could save me? I go, oh, no, nothing could save me yet. But the other thing I was going to say is that you mentioned it. It's very important to note that the Army Commander for free is extremely important. So he's going to play an additional card. So he's going to play Krogius level 3 and another card. So that's something to keep in mind. And I also gave Weekend a lot of free knowledge. So that's somewhat to his advantage. But again, very gracious opponent. So here it is. I played the Infernal Ritual, filled up as much lanes as I can. So what I'm essentially saying is, hey, you have the ability to open lane one of your creatures. I hope one of them isn't Krogius, but you do need to block damage now, right? Because he knows that I can turn something into a Wisp and give it Breakthrough. So I could turn his level 1 Krogius into a Wisp, give it Breakthrough. That's 8 damage. And now I'm presenting 30. So that's 38 damage that I'm presenting. He also has to go through the math calculations to stop himself from dying as well.
That's right, because that is your Nova's Touch ability. And now, again, that zombie brute on the far left facing off against Krogius, that should be at a 12-3 because it was played when you did the level 2 Infernal Ritual, and then you only gave it, so it was up to an 8-6, and then after combat it was down to 8-3. So it should be at a 12-3 for that as well.
So here we see the Glowhive Siren come on the board, and that changes the math on everything, right? Gaining 6 health. The creature itself I'm not too worried about because, again, I could turn into a Wisp. But him gaining 6 health really just changes the math on everything. And so now I got to go back to the drawing board a little bit. And I think my only saving grace is that Krogius wasn't open laned.
Yes.
Because I feel the math would have worked in his favor. Well, depending on how much I blocked, right? He's in a tough position as well.
It is dangerous for both of you that the math is going to come right down to the wire. I mean, you've got 32 and 21 health, and you're both going to be whittled down to almost nothing after this. So you still have your other play, and it looks like you're going right back to your banished pile to see if you can get anything of value from potentially playing the Stitcher, and you're also doing that math.
Yep, so you can see my hand waving around, talking, like going through the math. Again, I mentioned range of emotions, talking through it all. You can see me going back to the banish pile. I feel like Stitcher has to be my saving grace. Looking through, past the siren, come back. All right, now it has 8 health. That increases my Brute's defense against the Krogius by 2 and gains me 4 health. That's a 6 damage difference in the swing of the calculations right now, which is pivotal.
Because it doesn't matter the attack of the creature going against his Krogius. You're not going to be able to take it down anything short of your Krogius, that miracle draw there. So you're just trying to tread water, give as much health as you can to yourself, and then try to absorb as much before the breakthrough happening anyways. And the math worked out perfectly where you have 3 health and Weekend is at 22 at the conclusion of the first turn of the 4th deck cycle. So you're in hot water here, and there's probably only one card that can save you realistically, right?
Yes. Yep, and I have to draw it. And so you saw us talking there. I think we just forgotten the breakthrough for a moment, so we got to figure it out. 3 to 14.
Yep.
And there you go.
And looky here. Look at this cycle 4, turn 2 hand. Druid's Chant, Varric's Embrace. You got that level 2 Hibernating Meba, level 3 Glowhive Siren, and who do we spot but your own level 3 Krogius? Kckid, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, so jubilation, of course. But you saw my hand, my digital little TTS hamburger helper hand grab the Krogius, and I just wanted to throw it on the board. Every instinct said, throw it out there and scream, but that's not the right play. So I inched it forward, pulled it back. Now, I had to think very carefully because I'm at 3 health. And so if this round doesn't go to combat, there's no chance I can win, right? If Weekend's able to kill me before combat, everything that I've drawn, the Krogius here is null and void, doesn't matter. So you see, I go and I look at his deck and how much damage can feasibly be done to me, and what do I need to do to stop it? Because my hand is actually full of life gain cards, which is pretty crazy to think that I got fortunate enough to draw Glowhive Siren, Varric's Embrace, and Druid's Chant. So I can gain 5 from Druid's Chant. Varric's Embrace, I would have to hit my own creature, I think, because I can't hit Krogius to gain that health. So Glowhive Siren is probably the obvious contender there. So I'm doing the math and how much damage can be done to me, essentially, right? I see the Dizzying Siphon, so I know I have to gain health. That has to be my first play.
And no matter what, you're gaining at least 5 health with any of those 3 cards you mentioned. But Glowhive Siren is the one that gives you the best board state. I think Druid's Chant, that if you played that on any one of your creatures, it would buff them up. But at this point, I think it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So you play that Glowhive level 3, gain that 6 health, a little bit of breathing room, and something with more attack because you replaced that Stitcher. So you've got 3 creatures with double-digit attack. You've got that Glowhive Siren that's at 6, and you're just waiting to sucker out some play from Weekend and then drop your Krogius against him.
Right, and the other reason why I was very quick to want to play Krogius is because it's kind of the dream scenario where you can put a Krogius against another Krogius, and then you have a buff in your hand to make your Krogius outlive the fight, right? So that Druid's Chant, in my mind, was like, this is the second play, but luckily I caught that I was at 3 health and really had to figure, okay, let's reassess.
So Weekend plays a Gloom Reaper Hag in place of one of the, or to block against one of the brutes that would trade it out, and also then die itself to drain 3 health from you, which is putting you really low, not knowing that you have your own Krogius to really just kind of counteract. And then there you drop it.
Right. So I had no other play at this point. But I do believe the Gloom Reaper Hag was a really, really smart play because he's trying to increase his potential damage to me pre-combat. Right.
And then it puts Weekend in a really, really difficult spot. We don't know exactly what was in his hand, but we'll see. And I'm sure at this point you two are talking through all of the things that could be played and then doing the math, because it is 14 health to 9 right now that you're down, but you've got a Krogius that's going to break through and deal 4. You've got double digits showing on 2 other creatures. You've got that Glowhive Siren, and the best he can do is siphon 3 health off with that Gloom Reaper Hag at this point. So you seem to be in a really good spot, but it is razor thin margins at this point.
Yeah, and there's a lot of discussions. He's explaining the things in his hand right now and how much damage he can do to me. But I do have to go back to just say how like great of a person Weekend is, because
Absolutely.
the whole cycle 3 I didn't draw my Krogius and he knew it, right? And then cycle 4 he drew his right away. So when he played it, he's explaining like, oh, that's terrible. You had this online, you had it all worked out. Like I just got lucky and drew the Krogius, and that's part of playing Krogius, right? So then part of the conversation was here. It's like, well, I was fortunate enough, in a sense, to draw the Krogius at the right time as well. So we were also having that conversation.
And then it looks like plays Dissian Siphon, level 2. So gaining health, dealing damage to you, going to destroy his Gloom Reaper Hag. So then it's a 21-2 match right now. That was probably the most important play. But then what else can you play? A level 1 or level 2 card? How is that going to fill up 4 lanes? Or, I mean, it has to be 2
Right.
to try to absorb as much damage as possible. But it's looking really, really tenuous here.
Right, and in the discussion, he talked. He just out of gas at that point, didn't have the cards, so this is his best play. It was a 1 creature, and then play it through to the end, do the math totals. The Krogii kill themselves
Yep.
with the 4 breakthrough, and then
And then it was
16.
26 that were open laned. And the final total is going to be 2 health for you to -4 for Weekend. Oh, wait, unless we're doing a little bit
I think
more math.
-11.
-11? Okay.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's what the show notes say. So, wow, what an incredible back and forth event, especially in Cycle 4. Such a range of emotions. That was incredible.
Yeah, this is one of those games that, again, we had talked about doing something like this. And after this finish, I was just like, this has got to be one of the ones that we played, because I was confident I had lost, right? And then 180 degrees came the other way. And so a little bit of a lesson learned, right, is never give up. This game, you can flip the board so easily sometimes. It just takes the right cards.
And I think that is a great lesson for all of your viewers to be catching on, is that know your outs, play your strengths, and then you're never out of it until your health total is 0 or negative.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Kckid, this was awesome having me on to kind of help walk the audience through this really incredible match. And I hope that they learned a lot. I know that watching through this a couple of times, I certainly learned a lot, not just about your deck and your play style, but ways that I can do things better. And I'd love to do this again.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. I think you've probably pulled some comments out of me that I, probably wouldn't just self-divulge. So, and I'm always happy to try to help or like get into my mindset. Not that I think it's the best, but I think it does okay at this game. But one thing I did forget to mention, I want to go back to. I know that a couple of viewers have noticed the digital playmat that I have that I'm using that has my Forgeborn Finishing School emblem. Grandfather, the host of the You Inspired Gaming channel, created that for not just me, but all of the content creators that are out there for Solforge Fusion. Just because he wanted to do that to kind of upscale our product. I couldn't be happier. I love the look at it. I think it's amazing. I think it's a nice flair to the channel. So really big thank you to Grandfather for that effort. And I'm going to put a link to his You Inspired Gaming channel in the descriptions. If you haven't checked it out, please do. He provides a different type of content than I think any of the other content creators, and really does a good job showcasing some of the cards, showcasing deck openings, how to quickly look at a deck and kind of analyze it. So again, big thank you to Grandfather. And then lastly, thank you to you, Jurch, for coming on the channel and providing, not just a little bit of crossover, a little bit of your charisma to the channel, but and then just helping show another side of thought processes and gameplay.
Yeah, Grandfather does great with all the stuff he does with the community. So being able to boost each other up, that is what part of what makes this community so great, is everybody loves lifting each other up. And being able to be on your show and be a contributor is really fun for me as well. So this was a blast.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for attending this lesson with Forgeborn Finishing School. If you like this video, please subscribe, comment, and consider donating to our Patreon account. I'm Kckid, and I look forward to our next lesson.